Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. We are honored to be here. We have spent almost 9 weeks, and this is coming to the 10th week. And thank you for hosting us. We are honored to be with you. The title of our presentation is the Global Terrorism Index, the GTI, the methodology and meaning. Before I start, I would like to introduce you to the star of the show. His name is Nicholas Allen Randall. I call him Randall because he took, in 2015, he took Principles of Macro class from me. As I took attendance, his name was Randall, his last name, so I call him Randall. And we are very honored to have research mentors Dr. Luis Torres and Dr. Maura Herrera de Leon. And my name is Nina, and I am an economist. And I can tell first about Randall. Randall is an MHA graduate student, and he is also a veteran student. Therefore, the topic of terrorism is his interest. And you may ask, what does an economist has got to do with terrorism? I'm interested in terrorism, the cost of violence to the macroeconomy, to the US economy. In particular, I'm interested in studying the peace and prosperity. But lack of peace is violence, and terrorism is a form of violence. So I'm very interested in studying the impact of terrorism, especially the psychological impact, the uncertainty in the markets. That part is very interesting to me. So we start our presentation with acknowledgements. We are grateful to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Minority Serving Institutions Summer Research Team Program for allowing us to be a part of Summer Research Team 2019 at DHS Center of Excellence, BTI Institute. Thank you for having us. Special thanks are due to the BTI team, and we have provided on page number, I believe, 3, a more detailed acknowledgements in our final report through Dr. Beth White. Our summer research team experience at the BTI Institute was a great chance for us learning and professional development. We are very grateful for the 10 weeks uninterrupted intense research time, and we are very grateful to the University of Houston and the Anderson Library for allowing us to access a large volume of literature in terrorism research and also providing us an office space.
So relevance to the mission to the Department of Homeland Security. So their mission and why they were created was to protect American people from terrorist threats, and that's the whole reason why the DHS was created. And unfortunately, that didn't happen until after 9/11. As you know, we have a whole bunch of different agencies, and none of them were talking to each other just before 9/11, and they kind of had little tidbits about what was going on, but no one wanted to share information. So that's why, under the Bush administration, they created the Department of Homeland Security, as well as the Patriot Act. And I'll talk more a little bit about that as we go. And then any information regarding terrorism is really valuable to the Department of Homeland Security, so that's why I believe this project will be really useful for them. So there are 5 major issues when studying terrorism. The first one is the proper definition. Doing research, found out there's about over 100 different definitions of terrorism and domestic terrorism. No one follows one suit. So it's really hard for someone to classify terrorism. So that's why it's kind of hard for different agencies to really say, oh, this was terrorist. FBI, DOJ, everyone has their own definition. They share similarities, but they still have their own different definitions. And then the proper way to measure terrorism, that's just going to be dependent on who you're asking, how they measure it, where they get their data from, which leads me to the third one, is the data. There's multiple data sources out there. It took a while for us to find one true data source that we believed that was real good, which is the Global Terrorism Index. And then distinguishing domestic and international. So domestic is obviously homegrown here in the States, is what we're focused on, and international is anyone outside the United States trying to harm U.S. citizens or infrastructure. And then how should we define domestic terrorism? And that's one issue that's still trying to be worked out right now.
Thank you, Randall. And the description of our research project, we have got 4 objectives. Objective number 1 is to investigate the methodology of the Global Terrorism Index. Our second objective is to investigate the past. This is focused to the United States, past and present trends of the GTI score for the United States of America. Our third objective is, this is the part that the economist part of me, to investigate the economic cost of terrorism to the US economy. And finally, since at the national level, the GTI score does not allow us making local decisions about domestic threats, we propose to investigate an alternative index called Regional Terrorism Index for the metropolitan areas in the United States. As Randall mentioned to you earlier, how to define terrorism is #1 question, and there is no universally accepted definition. Each federal agency, Randall did spend his first 2 weeks actually, has their own perspective depending on their mission statement. The second question is, how are we going to measure terrorism? What proxy variables we are going to include? The GTI has got 4 variables. They are called the GTI determinants for every single country. And the next question is that what methodology to be employed? GTI is a weighted index that Randall is going to tell you within a second. The variables has got different weights. And then finally, we know that the terrorism has got psychological impact, lingering effects, one year to another one. Therefore, we incorporate a 5-year average in order to capture the impact of terrorism over time.
So the GTI, like Dr. Zonka said, it's weighted. So there's 4 weighted variables. So the first one is terrorist incidents in a given year. Right now, we're just focused here on the United States. And the Global Terrorism Index shows you different ones throughout any country that they have actually listed. So, and then the second one is the number of fatalities that happen in that given year. So this is actually the heaviest one for the weighted index. It's rated at 3. They go from 0.05 up to 3. And fatalities is the highest one, or the heaviest one that's weighted. And then total number of injuries caused by a terrorism incident. And then the approximate level of property damage at any given year.
And those are the 4 variables as Randall mentioned. And here I have got table number 1, and in order to estimate the GTI for 2018 in America, I think this thing is not working, 2018. The numbers for 2019 is not completed since the year is not completed. Therefore, we will demonstrate you for 2018. What we have to do is that for previous years, in order to capture the lingering effects. The first column is the number of incidents, number of fatalities, number of injuries, and the property damage. And number of fatalities have the heaviest weight. I'll show you the next slide. So we estimated for 2018, that's current year, 2017, the previous year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and 4 years ago. This is the lingering effects, the psychological effect of terrorism. And then once we estimate the raw score for every single year, they are highlighted in here, then in table number 7, we combine them together, again by using the weights. We estimate the total weighted average raw score for the United States in 2018. The number is 567. Okay? And now we go to the table between 0 to 10, and there are students in this room. When it comes to terrorism, you want to fail the test. You want to score 0, or close to 0. You don't want to get close to 10. The number for the United States, the corresponding number for 567 is 6.066 or 6.7. And the graph describes as the fluctuations in the GTI score for the United States. Again, you do not want to get close to 10. You want to get as close to 0 as possible.
So this slide is just the graph that you saw a second ago. So in 2002, that was right after 9/11. That's why you see the 8.05. So what that indicates, the United States was actually number 1 on, right now they're scoring 163 countries in the GTI. So if that was still current 163 countries back in 2002, we'd be number 1. And we were number 1 for the first 2 years that they showed, 2002, 2003. And then right after that, California, the Department of Homeland Security, and also the U.S. Patriot Act, and among other policies, you'd start seeing a decline going in. And then you start seeing a steady rise coming in right about here. There was no major international terrorist attacks that we could find, but unfortunately, there was a lot of domestic attacks. So a lot of researchers are correlating this rise with domestic attacks here in the United States. So that's why we're starting to see a slow rise going up.
Thank you. And you can see in the next slide is mine. I will compare from 2013 to 2018. In 2013, we scored 3.74 out of 10. In 2018, in 5 years, the number has almost doubled, 6.07. So basically, we see that the trend line in 2013 to 2018 indicates a sharp rise in the GTI score, which is an indication of rise in terrorist activity. So we looked at the literature. There is some recent literature. Our conclusions are in agreement with Stewart. For instance, he says domestic terrorism is a persistent trend in America and currently at the peak cycle in the United States. He also says despite the intense and a decade-long focus on international, transnational terrorism, domestic terrorism still is an issue for the United States, and the threat of domestic terrorism is often overlooked and understated, he says.
So here's the Global Terrorism Index map. And as you can see over here, these dark areas, so you have Iraq, Pakistan, Syria. So they're all right now rated 1 through 5. So the United States is that red over there, which is same as some African countries here. Right now we're number 20. Last year we were ranked around 34. So we lost that many positions in just 1 year. And unfortunately that was due to domestic attacks that happened. I'm sure you can think of some big ones that happened just in last 2018. But we're trying to obviously stay away from that top spot. But those recent attacks has unfortunately brought us up closer to number 1.
As Randall mentioned earlier, in 2002, 2003, we were number 1. So it's declining and going up again. So as a part of this project, there are expectations from Randall as a graduate student, and there are expectations from me. Dr. Beth White made it very clear that I'm going to incorporate this one in my class. So I have created a Padlet account. I don't know whether are you aware of Padlet. It's a very simple platform, and I will show it to you in a second. My plan is to incorporate the Global Terrorism Index into my econ classes, principles of econ. And my goal is to create an awareness both for Global Terrorism Index and Global Peace Index. And let me show you very quickly. We are almost towards the end of our presentation. This is my Padlet account. Excuse me. Look at this. Okay, it starts with my name and the name of the program and the Department of Homeland Security, the abstract. And as I continue, I have a touch screen computer. I've got everything that I have done in here, the economic cost of terrorism. And what I do is that I make this one, the acknowledgements, the references, and so forth. I make it available to my classroom students, and they respond to me with their input. So this is called a public account that I have created for this project. Okay, we're almost getting towards the end. Let me tell you very quickly about the follow-up, future research directions and follow-up grant. The preliminary results of our project indicates that there is a need for more comprehensive assessment of domestic terrorism. For our future research, in order to distinguish and capture the impact of domestic terrorism, again, we propose a new index called Regional Terrorism Index. Again, the index that we introduced today, the BTI Index, is a macro number, and it does not make any help. It doesn't allow us to making local decisions about threats and how to allocate our resources. So we propose that a new Regional Terrorism Index will provide a critical information and decision-making skill for local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies in the case of the threats, and deploy resources efficiently in order to keep our population safe from potential terrorism.
So that concludes the project, or this PowerPoint. If you have any questions or comments, you just let us know.
I've got 3 more presentations, 2 slides, 3 more. Okay, it has been a very long time for us, long summer. We have missed our 4 babies, and we cannot wait to get back home. This is Randall's dog, and the rest is my pets. They are in San Antonio. And when I teach economics, I incorporate cartoons. When I introduce unemployment, inflation, GDP, students do remember cartoons, economic cartoons. So we found 2 cartoons for terrorism. What is the difference between domestic and foreign terrorism? Not much. Evil is evil. So that's almost the same. And the next one is that the importance of domestic terrorism, and the Uncle Sam or federal government, it's out of control, it's quite big. It's time to address and recognize that in addition to the international, transnational terrorism, we have domestic terrorism in America, an important issue. Thank you for your time.